before the world had found its stillness, before the great sorting had been completed, sea from sky, order from chaos, the living from the formless dark, there came a moment when everything the gods had built trembled on the edge of being unmade. Not a war of politics or pride, not a dispute over territory or divine honor, something far more fundamental than that, a challenge to the very principle that the world could be ordered at all. This is the story of that challenge. It is the story of Typhon, the last and most terrible adversary the Olympian gods would ever face, the last child of the ancient earth, the one creature that the cosmos could not contain without the full force of its most powerful god, and even then, could not entirely destroy. It is also in the tradition preserved by Hesiod and elaborated across centuries of Greek poetry, the story of a beginning, because what Typhon left behind him, pressed down into the earth but never erased, shaped the mythic world for every generation that came after, every monster, every shadow at the edge of the known world, every creature that tested the courage of heroes and the order of civilization. They are, in ways the ancient poets understood deeply, his children. This chapter begins at the end of one war and the opening of another. To understand Typhon, you must first understand what had already been endured. According to Hesiod, the Boeotian poet who set down the theogony around the 8th century BCE, drawing on traditions far older than himself, the cosmos had already survived one war of total magnitude. The Titans, the great elder gods who had preceded the Olympians, had been overthrown in a 10-year conflict so absolute that the sea boiled, the earth burned, and the heavens shook down to their roots. Zeus and his siblings had fought until the Titans were finally broken, cast down into Tartarus, the deepest darkness beneath the world, bound there beyond reach and beyond return. It should have been the end, the settling of the order, the beginning of the age in which the Greek world understood itself to live. But the earth had not consented. Gaia, the deep earth herself, the oldest of all the primordial powers, had watched her Titan children imprisoned, and in that grief or that fury, or that ancient refusal to accept the new ordering of things, she bore one final child. Hesiod names the parents in the theogony, Gaia and Tartarus, the earth and the abyss, the oldest ground and the deepest void, together producing something that belonged fully to neither, something between and beyond, vast and many-formed and terrible. That child was Typhon. It is worth noting that not all ancient sources agree on his origins. The Homeric hymn to Apollo preserves a different tradition entirely, one in which Typhon is born to Hera alone, conceived in fury and jealousy after Zeus gave birth to Athena from his own head. Two accounts, unreconciled. What they share is not the parentage, but the creature himself. And the creature, in Hesiod's account, was unlike anything the world had yet been asked to hold. Hesiod's description in the theogony presses against the edges of language. From Typhon's shoulders grew 100 heads, serpent heads, each breathing fire, each given a different voice, and not merely the voice of a god or a man, but every voice that living creatures make, the roar of the lion, the bellow of the bull, the howl of the wolf, the hiss of the great serpent, and sounds without name or category. All of them poured from those 100 mouths at once. The sound of it, Hesiod tells us, made the gods themselves afraid. In the image that later antiquity elaborated and that survives in art and poetry across the classical centuries, his lower body was not legs, but coiling masses of serpent, a creature belonging to no single form, too enormous and too various to be held in any single image. In Hesiod's text, the 100 serpent heads are the detail that dominates. Whatever shape the rest of him took, the poets agreed on this. He was not a creature with a shape so much as a shape that creation had not yet named. And he rose from the earth that bore him, from the fury of the age that made him, and moved against Olympus. What happened next depends on which tradition you consult. In Hesiod's account, the oldest we possess, Zeus does not flee. He descends from Olympus armed with his thunderbolts and meets Typhon directly. The battle that follows scorches the world. Hesiod describes the earth burning, the sea seething with heat, the sky torn apart by lightning. The foundations of mountains melt. The deep places of the earth are lit from below by the fire of it. This is not a battle between individuals. It is a collision between two principles, one ordered and one not, and the world suffers for it. But 8 centuries after Hesiod set down his account, the scholar Apollodorus recorded a darker and more terrible memory of the battle. In his telling, Typhon does not simply lose to Zeus in open combat, he first defeats him. Typhon wraps the king of the gods in his coils. He wrestles the advantage from Zeus entirely, and then with grim precision he cuts the sinews from Zeus's wrists and ankles, the source of the gods' divine strength severed. The king of the cosmos left unable to move, helpless, diminished, dragged through the world he was meant to rule and deposited in a cave in Cilicia in the keeping of a creature named Delphine. The order of creation not destroyed, but something worse. Its guardian quietly unmade. The image is extraordinary in what it admits, and it is Hermes who undoes it. Hermes, acting alongside a companion sometimes called Aegipan, a figure associated with Pan. By stealth rather than force, they enter the cave, recover what was taken, and restore Zeus to himself. The king of the gods rises. The battle can resume. This episode, the seizure, the severing, the quiet recovery, is absent from Hesiod entirely. Whether it preserves a genuine ancient variant or represents a later elaboration cannot now be established with certainty. What it gives the story is something the Hesiodic version does not quite have: a moment of genuine suspense, a moment when the outcome was not settled, when the world could have gone the other way. Some later Hellenistic and Roman traditions, Ovid's Metamorphoses among them, add yet another detail: the gods fleeing to Egypt before the final confrontation, disguising themselves as animals to avoid Typhon's notice. Hermes as an ibis, Apollo as a crow, Dionysus as a goat. This is a vivid and enduring image in the later tradition, but it does not appear in Hesiod. It belongs to a different and later stratum of storytelling and should be understood as such. In all traditions, the ending is the same. Zeus strikes with his thunderbolts again and again, the weapons of storm and fire finding their mark. Typhon is driven back across the burning earth, And then, at last, Zeus hurls a mass of rock down upon the creature, vast beyond reckoning, driving him beneath the earth. Pindur, writing his first Pythian ode in the 5th century BCE, gives us the image that has endured most powerfully. Typhon, he tells us, is so vast that no single mountain can hold him. He is pinned beneath the sea-fenced cliffs beyond Cumae on the Campanian coast, and beneath Sicily, beneath Mount Etna simultaneously. A creature whose body spans the floor of the Mediterranean itself. His breath, the fire that erupts from Etna's summit. His restlessness, the trembling of the rock above him across an entire region of the earth. Hesiod's text also connects the battle's aftermath with Etna, though it is Pindur who develops this into the fully realized image that endured. The landscape itself as a living prison, eruptions as testimony to something still struggling far below. Not destroyed, imprisoned, buried but not silenced. And the mountains, ever since, have spoken for him. Why does this story occupy the position it does in the Greek imagination? On one level, it completes something. The Titanomachy, the war against the Titans, established the Olympian order by force. But a world built on that victory alone would carry a permanent question beneath it. What if the older powers had not entirely consented to be defeated? What if the Earth's grief had not been spent? Typhon is the answer to that question, the final answer. After Typhon, nothing rises against the Olympian order with any genuine prospect of success. The question is closed. The world settles into the shape it will keep. But the manner of his defeat repays attention. Typhon is not destroyed. He cannot be destroyed, or rather, to destroy him entirely would require an unmaking of something fundamental. He is of the earth. He is the child of Gaia and Tartarus together, born of the ground and the abyss. To unmake him entirely would be to unmake the deep places of the world from which he came, and so he is pressed down, buried beneath stone and fire, held rather than ended. Every eruption of Etna in the ancient imagining is his breath finding the air. Every tremor felt along the cliffs of Cumae is his restlessness transmitted upward through the rock. The world above is Olympian and ordered, but beneath it, always, something older and wilder and unconquered continues. The order is not absolute. It is maintained. There is a difference. And then there is the matter of his legacy. Typhon did not enter the world alone, and he did not leave it without issue. Hesiod tells us in the Theogony that Typhon fathered children, with Echidna, herself a creature of the deep places, half woman and half serpent, dwelling in a cave far from gods and men alike. From this union came much of what the Greek world understood as monstrous. Hesiod names them Orthrus, the two-headed hound who guarded the cattle of Geryon, Cerberus, the many-headed guardian at the gate of the underworld, the Lernaean Hydra, the water serpent that regenerated its heads as fast as they were severed, and Echidna bore the Chimera, fire-breathing and many-formed, part lion, part goat, part serpent, the creature that Bellerophon faced across the burning plains. The direct line of Typhon's paternity in Hesiod's text is clear for most of these creatures. For the Chimera, it is Echidna's motherhood that the text makes explicit, with the broader lineage implied by the surrounding passage. Later traditions extend the lineage further, attributing to Typhon and Echidna the Nemean lion, the Sphinx, and the eagle that tore at Prometheus, though not all of these appear in Hesiod, and some belong to later elaborations of the tradition. The principle, however, is Hesiodic and foundational. The monstrous things that haunt the Greek world are not random. They have a source. They are Typhon's inheritance, fragments of the last great chaos scattered across the earth after their father was driven beneath it. Every hero who faces a monster is, in some deep sense, fighting the echo of that final war. Every creature at the threshold of the known world is kin to the thing that nearly unmade creation itself. This is what Typhon means, not merely a great enemy overcome, but an origin point, the root from which the whole catalogue of Greek monstrousness grows. To understand what Typhon was is to understand why the world that came after him was never entirely safe, and why the heroes who walked through it were never fighting for mere glory alone. They were fighting, every one of them, to hold the line that Zeus had drawn across the floor of the Mediterranean Sea. The Olympian order holds. Hesiod set this story down around the 8th century BCE, a poet giving language to something his world already understood as true. The earth had risen, the gods had been tested to their limit, and barely that test had been survived. And beneath the stone and fire, beneath the cliffs of Cumae and the long slopes of Etna, something vast and ancient and unconquered continues, not destroyed, not silenced, simply held. The gods rule. The world has settled into the shape it will keep. But the earth remembers what it made, and from time to time, in fire and trembling rock, it says so. This legend has been told. Subscribe and return to Aeonkeep. More legends await.